Today we're going to talk about Antiviral. I love the movie. It's a great movie. This video is going to contain many spoilers about the film because there's many things I want to talk about and ramble on about. But just to give a brief thumbnail review, I loved it. It's a movie for lovers of unusual science fiction, as well as lovers of the early works of David Cronenberg, the dangerous, subversive, science fiction, body horror, weirdness of his early experimental films like Stereo and Crimes of the Future, and then later on in the 70s, the horror, sci-fi, hybrid, strange stuff he did, Videodrome Scanners, The Brood, Shivers, Rabid, all the rest. If you're a lover of that type of film, then Antiviral follows in the tradition of that. It's not a rip-off, it's not just a rehash, it's a film that kind of follows in the tradition of that kind of perverse, slightly perverse, strange, cold, clinical, futuristic science fiction type of story. So it's just another that type of story. The fact that it's made by David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg, is probably not exactly a coincidence, but at the same time, it's an original film in its own right, and a really great film, and a film that if you're interested in this type of movie, in that kind of, really what you would almost say a kind of a genre of film, that type of David Cronenberg, 70s, early 80s, dangerous, strange, science fiction type stuff, and I know there are many people who are not, who kind of hate that stuff, but if you love it, you're going to love Antiviral. So Antiviral takes place in a world where the cult of celebrity has risen to such a fever pitch. People are so obsessed with actors and fashion models and just people who are kind of like famous for no reason. Famous because they have a certain look or a certain, whatever. This kind of cult of celebrity has risen to such a fever pitch that there has emerged these medical clinic / high-end boutiques where you can go and purchase a celebrity illness, a flu that such and such celebrity has, a herpes simplex infection that such and such celebrity has, that you can commune with the celebrities and take in a little part of their body, a little part of their illness. And there's a couple of competing clinics. There's this Vol and Tesser, and then there is this Lucas Clinic. And the people who work at the Lucas Clinic, they're these salesmen who basically, they have these black boxes, these fashionable black boxes, like a high-end watch might come in, and instead they have these little vials of whatever, of bacteria, viruses. One of these salesmen is this guy, Sid Marsh. And we see in the early scenes Sid Marsh, putting on the high-pressure sales tactic to one of these people who go into the clinic. And the people who are in these clinics who are buying these illnesses, they seem like kind of zombified, unhappy people who need something to kind of, bring meaning to their life. The celebrity somehow brings meaning to their life. And he's putting on the high-pressure sales tactic of, you look like a connoisseur. I could sell you many of these, but really, I can see you're serious, and there's no choice. There's no choice. You have to have this one. Like he's just selling any kind of high-end luxury item. He's just selling this illness. And Sid Marsh, our lead character, one of these salesmen, a very dapper young man. And what Sid is actually doing on the side to make a little bit of money on the side is he's infecting himself with these viruses because basically in this future world they're able to copy protect these viruses, and these businesses are actually able to control and copy protect these viruses and turn them into commodities. They're able to actually copy protect a virus and infect their clients, and that virus is not going to be contagious, and it's going to have the signature of the Lucas Clinic or Voluntas or whatever. What he's doing is he's infecting himself with these viruses and getting sick himself and taking them home, and then taking swabs of his own bodily fluid, his own excretions, and then using his own machine to break the copy protection on these viruses. Because in this future, these viruses are mass produced by these machines that are called ready-face machines that are kind of like 3D printers for viruses and illnesses. Basically, you can take a blood sample and sample a virus, and then it actually displays a picture of the machine analyzes the virus and gives you this picture of literally a visual picture of the virus that can communicate to the prospective buyer what this virus is. Really heady. So Sid Marsh is going through the film, and one of the key assets of the Lucas Clinic is this actress. We don't really know if she's an actress or whatever. She's just an icon. She's a celebrity, Hannah Geist, the blonde-haired bombshell, and they have a whole line of Hannah Geist products here. And Sid is eventually tasked with going and retrieving the blood of Hannah Geist, and he can't help himself. He wants to infect himself with going to the big leagues and get some Hannah Geist infections now, and he finds himself infected with this virus, which is potentially lethal. And he must, it's a detective story from there on in. He must kind of team with Hannah Geist's group and find out, who is the source of this infection, and try to unravel the mystery of his own possible demise. So that's a thumbnail. Of course, you've already seen the film. You may hate it, you may love it, you may whatever. To me, it's a film of incredible science fiction ideas, And as I was saying before, I think that you could fall into the trap, and that's why I didn't really watch it or didn't seek it out, because it's a 2012 film. It's been out for a few years. I didn't initially seek it out because I felt that, okay, this is a ripoff, this is a takeoff, this is a derivative of David Cronenberg's films from the 70s and the 80s. Because, it really is. Brandon Cronenberg, has said that this film is a really satire on the cult of personality, on on celebrity, and it absolutely is at the same time. But there's all of these, unusual science fiction ideas, and characters that seem to have an analog to things in David Cronenberg's films. The idea of, all of this stuff, but these large corporations, and the corporate espionage and the mental, mental saboteurs and biological saboteurs, and this is something straight out of Existence, and scanners and all of those films, the idea of, and it's a really crazy idea of cell stakes, of being able to replicate the cells, muscle cells of these celebrities, and then have these deli restaurants where instead of they have the little pegs in the meat, under the glass, where it has little pictures of the celebrity. Oh, buy some Hannah Geist. Oh, buy some, Matt, whatever, some Aria, whatever. The idea of stem cell meat, even going back to Rabid, the idea in Rabid was that doing skin grafts by taking parts of tissues from one part of the body and then making the cells non-specific, making them stem cells, and so they can be grafted onto another part of the body. That was way ahead of its time, but that, again, that was something that David Cronenberg had kind of read about or was thinking about and kind of putting into the film, and now in some way, not exactly like in Rabid, but in some ways that's becoming a science reality. The idea of using stem cells, the idea of that you can make a tissue into a kind of non-specific tissue that can be used in different ways inside of the body. That's I mean, the idea of the, and even the gadgets, the ready face, that to me looks like, something from the game pods and Existenz, or even the typewriters in Naked Lunch, or the pods and the Fly. I mean, it's the sci-fi, MacGuffin that is moving the story ahead and allows you to expand certain plot points, and the idea that you can replicate these viruses, and then even characters like this, Sid Marsh's supposed friend Arvid, but who's kind of a backstabber and kind of wants his blood, is out for him, literally. That again, those kind of characters call back to, like James Woods' friend in Videodrome, and all of these, different characters in different David Cronenberg films. I mean, they're kind of, limitless kind of call, and even the language of the film, the dense, compact science fiction gobbledygook that the characters spew out during parts of the film that kind of take us to different stages. That's all kind of David Cronenberg type stuff, and even David Cronenberg actors, like Nicholas Campbell, who was in The Brood and The Dead Zone. He plays the Mr. Lucas, the guy who's running the clinic, and Sarah Gadon, who plays Hannah Geist. Of course, she was in A Dangerous Method. So, again, there's all of these kind of cross-pollinating things between the younger and the older Cronenberg. And some may call foul, but for me, in my mind, David, the type of film, the type of science fiction film, that science fiction body horror, I guess what you'd call it, the science fiction / horror type of drama that he was making in the 70s and 80s, to me that wasn't wholly, an invention of David Cronenberg in my mind. That was coming out of the science fiction of the 70s, the kind of the slightly perverse futurist thinking, what was going on in the modern science and literature, and trying to think ahead as far as the new trends and what was going on. So the David Cronenberg films were kind of an outgrowth of that kind of radical type of thought process, thought line, those types of stories. So to see someone else kind of pick up that kind of gauntlet and makes an interesting science fiction film full of really interesting ideas that you keep thinking about, even like days after watching this movie, I'm thinking about the ideas of the film. I thought it was a movie about illness as well, and I'm not really that fan of movies that feature protracted illness and whatever, and that I kind of like avoid having to watch a character be sick or spew up bodily fluids for 2 hours, or 90 minutes. I don't really like to watch that type of film. But that's part of what Antiviral is about, and there is some queasiness and some weirdness, but I would say it's really not even as kind of explicit or as out there as some of David Cronenberg's later stuff was, like The Fly and things like that. It's not that gooey and gushy. It's, to me, a film of really interesting science fiction ideas, and that you just keep thinking about, later on. I mean, is that possible? And then you think about, the kind of the symbolism of the film, and and the idea of a culture that almost like cannibalizes celebrities of like, what do you want to, the idea of wanting to be infected with an illness of a celebrity, or even wanting to eat. I mean, it's even made mention in the film, want to eat a piece of the celebrity, want to ingest that inside of you. Like it's almost like a form of cannibalism. What does that say about the world? And are we almost there? What does that mean? Why do we want that? Why do we want a piece of themselves? It's this almost this irrational impulse. It's a strange, irrational human impulse that is somehow close to love in a way. It's a kind of physical, it's a form of physical, emotional togetherness. I mean, it's a heavy stuff if you start thinking about it. If you go beyond just the surface and the satire, you realize that there's some interesting ideas that you can kind of think about. Because I started thinking about the movie, and I started thinking about how it really is kind of a love story, a physical love story. It starts off with this guy, Sid Marsh, who is, is a salesman. He's on the outside. He's a passenger. He goes. One of the first scenes we see him is he's giving the shtick to the, oh my God, this Hannah Geis. She's perfect, isn't she? There's just something about her that just engages you and grabs you. He's doing this while the client's in front of him, and to the side of him is this, running loop of Hannah Geis taking off her sunglasses, the showroom. And, there's something about her that's just stunning, that's incredible. And so, he's again, he's a salesman, At the same time, on his off hours, he's being constantly infected with different Hannah Geis, right? He's selling different Hannah Geis, on the side, right? And everywhere we go, even in the first shots of the film, he's dominated by these big Hannah Geis billboards. He's visually dominated by her. And then, amongst the fanatics and the sycophants, what happens? He actually gets infected with Hannah Geis, the virus, that the viral assassin, which is meant to kill Hannah Geis. How more closer can you get in this world than to be infected by the same virus that could possibly kill this celebrity? So he begins to become closer, and notice that first scene when there's the early dream sequence when he's walking through the flowers, and then the first scene where he's drawing the blood from Hannah Geis, where she has the blinders on. How there's this strangeness to him, and there's this connection that he has to Hannah Geis, this connection to a person that he's never met in person, but whose illnesses have coursed through his body, this kind of connection. And then he gets even more closer and more closer, and then there's that moment in the in the house, the secluded house, where he's already starting to succumb to the illness, and he's bleeding through his mouth, and he looks at his blood, and he looks at the blood on his hands, and then he goes over to Hannah Geis, and she's asleep. She's not even seeing him. She doesn't even have any kind of eye contact, connection to him really. And yet what happens, she starts to cough blood, and he's drawn to it. He's drawn to someone that he has a connection through just simple blood. And it's all blood. And remember, what does he shoot up with Hannah Geis? He takes her blood and he shoots up directly her blood. And then there's that blood, at that scene, when she's asleep and coughing up blood, and he has that strange connection to her. And then her handler, her assistant, shoos him out. I mean, and then of course the last scene where he's, basically turned his celebrity into this kind of iron lung machine organic system, which is half Hannah Geist, half, as the Volantesser salesman tells us, he has expanded the system of Hannah Geist way beyond, it's like a Hannah Geist garden now. It's Hannah Geist as this kind of organic celebrity, is this organic machine now that will just produce viruses, and then that strange, perverse last moment where he's sucking the blood, the connection is run full circle, that now he is, fully engaged. There's no more passenger. He is now fully in, and he's able to indulge in some blood drinking. Yeah, I mean the last scene is a David Cronenberg scene. It's that David Cronenberg last scene that you think the film is going strange, and then the last scene bumps you into this cliff of strangeness of like what's going on, and then it's just like welcome to Anexia, and then boom, black. You just leave us on the cliff, and we're just standing out there in this weirdness. Yeah, it even has like a David Cronenberg climax and and explosive, strange conclusion. Yeah. But I'm glad somebody's doing this type of science fiction film full of ideas. The fact that it's David Cronenberg's son almost is irrelevant, really, to me. I mean, I just love this science fiction film full of ideas and interesting stuff, and somehow, and taking a commentary on our society and mixing it with science fact, and mixing it with futurism, and mixing it with what could come next as far as this kind of biological warfare on this kind of small scale, There's so many interesting ideas and connections and things in the film. And again, as I said, it kind of, to me, leaps out of, it feels like it leaps out of that kind of heady science fiction literature of the 70s, I mean, our lead character, Caleb Jones, feels like a character in some kind of cyberpunk novel of the early 80s. I mean, he's not a really heroic guy, He gets himself into a lot of situations where he finds himself, beaten up and dominated and used, and because he's all wasted out. Because remember, by the time we see him in the film, for months and months, his body has been just racked by these illnesses because he's a viral carrier. He's like a character from some cyberpunk novel who's carrying this information inside his mind, carrying some bits and bytes that are encoded inside his brain. Instead, his body is carrying this. He's like a smuggler of this viral load, And he even makes a note of this, like, man, I can't even deal with this. I'm getting sick, And his friend Darvin's like, oh, suck it up. You're going to be fine, Everybody's like, oh, meanwhile, the guy looks like death, and Caleb Jones, I mean, it would be easy for an actor to kind of, put on some little glycerin, a little shiny makeup, something, and maybe a little bit of gray makeup, and just kind of, the actor Caleb Jones, I mean, he's 100% in. He gives this incredible physical performance where he is just this, you feel the illness and the physicality of what he's going through internally. He just is able to give it 100%. Oh my God, he is just incredible. And it is just wild and incredible. And the look of the film is incredible, shot by the incredible Canadian cinematographer / director Karim Hussein. This idea of somewhere between a hospital and a fashion shoot, where there's white on white and really, very tricky contrast stuff, and it was shot digitally on an Arri Alexa, and some scenes are almost lit completely with natural lights, with street lights, or with, in some cases, there's one scene where he's breaking into this apartment in the middle of the night, and it's lit almost, it looks like primarily just by flashlights. It's incredible. The look of this film is incredible, and the fact that it's white on white, very kind of muted, and of course, this is one of the films where you've got to, like most filmmakers, you want to control red and keep red almost out until you get to the blood, until you get to the Hannah Geist's blood, and you get the redness of the blood and the connection that Sid has to Hannah Geist comes out, and I don't know. There's so many things to talk about in this film. So many of the science fiction ideas, so many of the themes. I think it's just a great, interesting film that, immediately the first time I watched it, I watched it streaming, on iTunes, and I'm like, man, I gotta get the Blu-ray. I gotta watch the commentary. I want to watch the deleted scenes, and I gotta, the deleted scenes, which I think are on YouTube. There is one interesting scene where it kind of explains the idea of why doesn't, this is a guy who's showing up to work sick every day, so, why doesn't anybody realize that, he's smuggling out there's a couple of those ready face machines have gone missing, there's that guy that shows up to work sick all day. Maybe it could be that guy. There is one scene where there's the testing of the blood, and then the medical technician goes, this is a gift from Volan Tester, we want to keep you, in the game, basically. So there's some explanatory scenes which explains, how Caleb's character, how Sid Marsh is able to get away with this. And they were cut. And I think that for good measure, I think you don't need that explanation. I think the world is so whacked out that you don't, it almost goes beyond kind of following this routine logic, that the film is so heady and so perverse and so out there. The ideas are so, strange that you almost kind of don't even need to explain, and you can kind of hop over some of the narrative, coincidences and things that don't exactly kind of add up. So, what can I say? I mean, Antiviral, a great film, and I love the first moment we see Sid. He's hanging out on his roof, dominated visually by Hannah Geist, as he is frequently in the film. Remember when he's in the room at Volan Tester with the Hannah Geist pictures, after Hannah Geist supposedly dies, which I love that was a con, and I love. We got to mention Malcolm McDowell in his little, basically extended cameo as Hannah Geist's physician, and he has a very interesting little monologue where he basically kind of ties up, in some ways, what the film is about, and how he's gotten these skin grafts, and it's somehow enriched his life and it brought him closer to celebrity, and that how he recognizes in Sid Marsh's character that it's not just a passing thing. That no, you could have smuggled that blood out in a different way. You didn't have to inject yourself. You wanted to be close to Hannah Geist as well. That you, as a person who has you are into the cult of celebrity as well. You are having this fixation, this relationship with a person that you've never seen. And you want to have that, and you want to have a relationship on a biological level. You want to have that relationship on a physical, biological level by literally injecting yourself with their DNA, with their cells, you know. And he's able to do it like all the great Brits are. I don't think all the great Brits are. Malcolm McDowell was able to do it. Malcolm McDowell is a great actor who can make this kind of, you know, if you were to look at the script or print it out, it's a silly monologue. In other people's hands, it could be silly and ridiculous. But there's something about Malcolm McDowell who is able to, you know, like just like in Cat People. I mean, it's kind of a silly premise, you know, but and other Malcolm McDowell films. But he's able to give a weight to this dialogue, and somehow kind of encapsulate kind of what this entire movie about and what this world of the movie is about. A great role, and I think it's one of the better Malcolm McDowell films. One of the better things I've seen him do in years. Great stuff. So what I was talking about? I love, you know, how, you know, in another film, our lead character will be this cool character and have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. In this film, he has like a thermometer hanging out of his mouth. He's hanging out in just a cool cat. Instead of the cigarette, he's got the thermometer, like almost in place of the cigarette. You know, it's such a weird thing. And there's this Japanese poster that I think has that on the cover of the poster. It seems like they kind of picked up on that. And you know, I thought there was going to be some wild Japanese DVD of this film, and if this had come out in the 80s or 90s, there would be some cool Japanese laserdisc, you know, this incredible cover, you know, and this, because I mean, I was looking for like this, like a cover that had all the blood or some kind of weird, but this film just looks like it got distribution in the U.S. It got a Canadian release because of the Canadian backing, the Canadian financial distribution connections. It's gotten some other, you know, kind of perfunctory releases in the rest of the world, but that's about it. It's a damn shame. I think this is a damn good movie, and you know, if you know, fans of unusual, outre, the strange can't support this movie, this new interesting work, then what the fuck can you support? You know, this is a great film. If this had come out in the 80s or 90s, it'd be a fucking it would be a cult classic. It really would. It really fucking would. And if you haven't watched it, I know I said at the beginning, you know, I really mean it. It's a great movie. It's great. I love it. It's great. So there it is. Antiviral. It's great. Quote, unquote, it's great. John Hand, Pulsing Cinema.